Hi, it's me, Tobiasz. Spring has fully settled in on our roads, and with spring, the motorcycle season has begun. We will do our best to help you get your motorcycle ready for the season, ready to ride, ready for safe riding, and so that every time you come back in the saddle, not pushing it. Today, I'll tell you how to check the technical condition of your motorcycle. Let's start with the front suspension. To check the front suspension, we'll mainly need a small screwdriver and our hands. We'll be checking whether the suspension has any play and whether the fork seals are still good for another season. First of all, we need to check the steering head bearing to make sure it doesn't have any unnecessary play and that the handlebars turn smoothly without resistance. Most importantly, we need to lift the front axle so that the handlebars can easily turn from one stop to the other on their own. Here, we don't have any issues. The handlebars turn smoothly and we don't feel any resistance. Sometimes it happens that the bearing has so much play that, of course, you won't feel any resistance on the handlebars, but as a result, there will be play in the headset. To check if this play is present, we need to lift the front wheel again and move it back and forth. There isn't much play here yet, but something is already starting to happen with the headset bearing because a very slight play has increased. It might be enough to tighten the adjustment, and that way we'll eliminate the play. However, most often this means having to replace the headset bearing. The next component that we need to check is the fork seals. Of course, after winter, when it's cold, it's very common that after taking the motorcycle off the stand for the first time, oil leaks from under the seals, the fork tubes get wet, and you need to keep that in mind. Never ride with damaged fork seals, because the oil from the forks will run down the tube straight onto the brake pads and you could lose your brakes. And unfortunately, that could lead to disaster. To check if the seal is still good, just take a screwdriver, insert it between the dust seal and lift it up. Now that it's lifted, check to see if there's any rust or water collected here. Check if all the components present, such as the ring and the seal itself, are not rusty. No, there are no visible signs of wear on it. After carefully completing the thorough inspection process, we then gently press the seal back into its precise original position, and that effectively concludes our comprehensive inspection of the entire front suspension system. But we'll stay at the front for a moment longer because in front of us is one of the most important components of the motorcycle, the braking system, as it is responsible for safety while riding. And here we need to check whether the brake pads are still in good enough condition. If they aren't, then of course we need to replace the brake pads. And after checking the pads and the caliper, we move up and inspect the front brake master cylinder. Here we have a small inspection window. This shows us whether there is still brake fluid in the system, or most importantly, whether there is any fluid at all. Remember that as the brake pads wear down, the pistons extend from the caliper and the fluid level will drop. If you fill the fluid up to the maximum level and then want to replace the pads, you'll also have to remove some brake fluid from the system. And through that little inspection window, you can check whether the fluid is worn out. The most common sign that brake fluid is worn out is that it turns dark brown. New fluid is usually light in color. This isn't always the case, but that's how it usually is. If you don't know how to check it, lack experience, or simply don't want to take any risks, just replace the brake fluid once a season. It's a very inexpensive procedure. The cost ranges from 10 to 60 zlotys. You can be sure that your brakes won't overheat, especially when riding faster. We've checked the brake fluid level and we are not done with the front wheel just yet. We'll stay with it for a moment because I'm going to show you how to check the condition of the brake pads. Are your brake pads or the brake pads on your motorcycle ready to be replaced, or can you still ride on them for a bit longer? First of all, we need something to shine some light with, just a lamp. Position your head along the brake disc and shine the light into the caliper. Your eyes will definitely see the brake pad and the friction lining, which is in contact with the brake disc. In the service manual, you will definitely find the minimum thickness of the brake pad that should be present for everything to work as it should. And if not, it's even worth checking at the store to see what new brake pads look like, see how thick they are, and compare them with yours. If you have less than half left, you should already be thinking about replacing the brake pads. We've finished with the front suspension. Let's move to the rear. We proceed with the rear in the same way as with the front. We check if there's any play, unnecessary play in the rear swing arm. To check this, it's best to leave the front axle up, grab the wheel like this, and gently move it. Unfortunately, this motorcycle has a slight play in the swing arm. We'll check exactly where it is in a moment. Most likely, the play is starting here, the swing arm bearing, and it will have to be replaced in the near future. While we're at the suspension, at the rear suspension, at the rear wheel, we also check whether the braking system is in good condition. This motorcycle doesn't have a brake disc, it has a drum, so the inspection is a bit more complicated. We need to take the wheel apart and check the condition of the linings, the condition of the brake shoes, and see if everything is all right. Of course, if we have a drum brake, we should lift the rear wheel and check whether the wheel spins freely and if there isn't excessive friction. If there is, we should gently loosen the brake cable. If the brake is too soft, if the lever travel on the brake is too large, then we should definitely tighten it. After checking the rear suspension, we move on to inspecting the drivetrain, because let's be honest, it's one of the most frequently damaged components on a motorcycle, maybe not so much damaged as worn out. To check it, we start by looking at the chain tension. If it's already at the end, that is, if the axle is pushed as far back as it can go, then we should be thinking about replacing it. We always replace the chain together with the sprockets. If it hasn't been stretched out completely yet, we check the tension. To check the tension, we need to find out how tight the chain should be. In other words, how many millimeters of slack it should have. Let's say, for example, it should be 30 millimeters. I suspect that in this motorcycle, it will be more. I'd have to check that. We touch the chain at this spot between the sprocket and the drive shaft, pull it up to the swing arm, and check using even a caliper whether the tension is as it should be. We don't do this just once. We should check this all around the entire circumference of the wheel, over the whole length of the chain. So we turn the wheel, check, turn, check, turn, and check. And we keep turning and checking. In this case, there's no problem with the chain. The chain is evenly tensioned. Very often, it happens that the chain is loose in one spot and tight in another. And that's a sign that we should replace the drivetrain. We've already covered the front suspension, rear suspension, and drivetrain. So now let's focus on what's most important for the motorcyclist, the handlebars and their proper adjustment. The most commonly misadjusted part of the handlebars is the clutch lever. As you can see here, we have too much play, which means the clutch won't fully disengage the cable, won't completely disengage the whole system. To fix this, we need to quickly remove the housing. Or maybe not the housing, but rather the cable cover, and gently tighten it. Very often on motorcycles, you have an adjustment here and at the engine entry point. The play should be 2 millimeters. So we loosen it, take a look and check. We tighten it and lock it in place. We put the cover back on and that part is done. The clutch is now adjusted as it should be. It's also a good idea to turn the handlebars both ways and check if the lever doesn't get too tight, because maybe the play is too small, or the cable itself under the tank or in its mounting is not positioned correctly. The next element is the brake. And here we need to pause, because as we mentioned at the very beginning, you should check the brake fluid and the brake pads. However, it often happens that the front brake lever just feels soft. When you squeeze it, if you pull it in with all your strength, the lever will reach the handlebar. And here, there can be two symptoms. The first is that you might have new brake pads that haven't settled in yet, so the lever will sink in. And the second symptom is that your brake system has air in it. And the easiest way to check this is simply to squeeze the brake lever 3 or 4 times. If the brake firms up and feels as it should, it means there's air in the brake system and you should bleed it. Suspension, brakes, handlebars, that's all behind us now. Now it's time for one of the most important issues, the motorcycle's tires. On this motorcycle, on this machine, we can see that the tread is still pretty good and could definitely last for a few more years, especially considering the power this engine produces. However, we just looked at the DOT, which is the date the tire was manufactured, and it's from 2012. This tire was manufactured in March, and all of this information is written on the tire. You'll find the marking that says DOT 0312. 03 is the month, 12 is the year. A tire should be no older than 5 years. After that time, you replace the tire, the rubber, no matter what it looks like. There's an old saying, if you lubricate your rider, don't forget to lubricate the chain with chain lubricant and to change the oil in the engine. We change the oil every year, each time, or every 6,000 kilometers. Unless, of course, the service manual says otherwise. So we follow the interval described in the service book. Let's not try to be smarter than the manufacturer or the engineers. Use the type of fluid, the type of oil that is recommended to us, the one specified in the service manual. We change the oil filter every time along with the oil, and we check the technical condition. The condition of the air filter. If we have a paper filter, we throw it away, and with every oil change, we install a new one. And if we have a filter that we lubricate with oil, then we simply take it out, wash it, and lubricate it. There's one more thing we shouldn't forget if we want peace of mind during a whole season of riding, and that's the fuel filter. Very often, fuel filters are located inside the tank, and here you have to put in a bit of effort to replace it, to take it out and put in a new one. But just as well, if such a filter isn't located in the tank, we can install it on the intake between the petcock and the carburetor. Such a filter costs about 6 zlotys, give or take. It's not a lot of money, and we can be sure that the jet in the carburetor won't get dirty, so we can ride worry-free all season. And if something happens, we just throw out the filter and put in a new one. Let's not kid ourselves, winter is quite a long period in a motorcyclist's life, and during winter, all sorts of strange and inexplicable things can happen to your motorcycle. In the fall, everything is fine. In the spring, you take your motorcycle out of the garage, connect the battery, start it up, and it turns out your bike has no lights. First, you should check if the fuses are okay. If a particular light isn't working, well, you definitely won't get away without taking the bulb out, checking its condition, or simply replacing it. We check the parking lights, low beams, high beams, turn signals, and of course the brake lights. And it's the brake lights that most often tend to break. Most commonly, it's the micro switch in the handle or some sensor that simply fails, the one responsible for triggering, for sending power further into the system and lighting up the lamp. And finally, we're left with the most trivial things, the motorcycle's lighting and the registration certificate. Many of you have probably even forgotten where your motorcycle's registration certificates are, since you're no longer required to carry this document, but it often turns out that your last inspection was done several years ago and your insurance has been invalid for several weeks or, in extreme cases, even months. You must not forget about this. Take care of your inspection, take care of your insurance, your liability insurance, because lacking these documents, lacking insurance, or lacking a technical inspection can end up being catastrophic for your wallet above all.